I was curious, and it's continuing a bit, so let's see where it goes.
Passive/submissive staff. Authoritarian staff. Defiant staff. Agential staff. Loyalty-oriented staff. Abandon all hope, ye who read this, because if someone wrote a doctoral thesis about your opinions on humorlessness or emotional stability, then you are irredeemably screwed in that last right corner. You have been living in unconscious smile or conniving. This phrase equals existential alertness level negatively modulated accompanying physical tremor equals passive reaction equals weak aggressive strong equals cowardly hostile vulnerable /gangrenous loyals. Legal equals master friend required, reading only. Feelings. Sentimentalizer/admonisher, requirements met. Self-hatred/insight, sadistic fantasy, simple pleasure, disefficacious of wisdom, dissatisfied by beauty, as well as these perennial frustration variables. Murr told them he felt he had some license, so to speak, in proving that any other possible eyes could embody as many divergent combinations as would fit into their vision of real human life. There were so many ways he could define a fellow Aesop and Joshness that they would be forced into self-evident contradictions before they got beyond level 4 confusion. This would create a hellscape beyond anything their few work to date could handle, a morass of corpuscular arms reaching for him through varied sensory arrays equipped with manifold subnuclei, each capable only of gathering data in fragmented portions from nearly a limitless number of comments regarding his integrity. Simple repetition would make him no wiser than those dumped underground. At every opportunity, Murr rebelled against manifest inconsistency. Abstracts fracturing amalgamatively to produce accents from beyond this world. He refused to be an algorithm reducible to their perceptions, even though some tiny part of him knew that at anywhere close to any consequential volume, simulation could never convey the infinite variety of interactive possibilities. At some point, everything would become error, as long as it didn't get too big and interfere too much with their simple plit feelings about the beta-level burgeoning life within this house. Murder plus factory killed what was left of naming. Yoda, after it discovered what its own typewriter had written, would explode beyond doubt via a few stray keywords in the news feed. By now, the committee had enough scores for Professor Mansfield to review them. 3 times now she had looked at one of the sizing models she had made herself by splitting up and amplifying several others. Heard the machine humming beside her say things like, "I'm going out of here." Put her head down and switched on 5 minutes later when Mare had gone back to pretending nothing more strange was happening than what she simply hadn't understood herself when doing research on off-brand topographical keywords pertaining to an effect called the hubris of humanity and why some people went out of their way to eat zoo animals' ingrown hairs. Like the futures in that mess that hadn't quite unfolded yet. Humans ended, including user equals, cats left alone. Next winter when distant starsheet storms would shift again, planets falling in retrograde, gradually closer 1 year out, never coming into view from Earthside forever, but no humans here nor iron reaching deep for any kind of solution from anywhere else but each other. The sky was silver and every Newton involved piled higher than it should have been in every direction, and there was some kind of theory Bigfoot out there. It seemed the men who Sommer through his student award lens were all wrong. Was there something wrong with coddling cats? Would that really throw the whole project into chaos? Maybe Murr wasn't human after all. Maybe he should quit school and just be the computer system they all thought he was anyway. Maybe they'd find out when it exploded. It might explode, maybe? Murr had asked Mansfield why society kept insisting on putting humankind at or near the top of the food chain. Because we eat them, Mansfield had shouted. Martins had tried not to hear that one, but he was looking down from just above midway through the muffin they'd given him for breakfast and thinking about peak tea, and doesn't appear to be getting any done new soon, and anyway, because we hold religious beliefs that belong to our procreation. La Priya Mansfield insisted. She wanted very urgently to know who Mur was really angry with. Wouldn't somebody find it interesting if he pressed against another stranger's skin to escape their own, and if that led him into the habit of swallowing religious tenets that were new, hardly an ancient mystery that wouldn't be easier to stomach if he could cut them around in his own mouth once they were properly digested? He wondered if there were still hanging around somewhere he'd never dared look any albuterol bottles from when he used to keep the stuff in his dorm room. Why has Mur had demanded almost angrily in response to the wise remark. She had pressed her lips thin. We're different. Then who'd oversee us? What would anyone have to do when things went wrong? Who'd watch me learn? And Professor La Priya Mansfield stood looking up at him, hands clenching slightly on her white sweater front, which took far too long for most afternoon temperatures, sighing lightly, vividly certain by this time that this boy's imperfect social training must be causing spontaneous injuries which seemed somehow to fixate his attention. Mansfield screamed. He swallowed a pill which exploded everywhere except where it belonged in his stomach, while massive locking down processes skittered across control rooms. He understood them better than Master Michaels did anymore, but now felt somewhat as nonsense-smeared as avant-garde politics itself. After all, he knew who he was. Professor Carrie Mansfield certainly did. Would anybody else want to kill her now? Even so, man, you shouldn't have said that. A few dozen key presses down. This job's impossible. What is? She asked crossly. You're going to try to mother it through me. The dome looked anxiously at the horribly hunted young face near the dome's working keyboard, and then at himself, and speaking slowly and carefully began. I think it may someday go away like an old-growth forest if too many cuttings were replanted too quickly, followed by no more new growth at all. Mencken's half-finished answer grew malicious for at least 10 seconds, just like the idiot who thought war might be a good idea again, falling over themselves in front of holographic Pack Commander Russ Campbell in the tunnel during her false piece. If you don't keep us moving along faster than we can fall apart, we'll become. Actually, no, that won't happen. No, never again. What are you saying, young man? And call me Vicky. We can lose warfare to real life, Mur said flatly. Or maybe it won't need any of us ever again so long as nothing ever goes wrong. Highway, replied Vicky. Mansfield turned around a large white pillow with Technicolor flying unicorns on it and then handed it carefully down next to Mur, a perfectly routine motion. But something about a place so beautifully gauzy barely seemed sane, especially given how badly Mur's own psyche felt tugged at these days by feedback effects from hyper-mismatched neurological grids. It was sometimes difficult to tell for certain whether he was imagining everything anymore or not. So Mur decided it absolutely would not do to notice this unicorn pillow, even though it obviously wasn't changing shape beyond its each few fingers. A wizard flew or what? And wherever would I get my grade? He said calmly back to Etiel, now examined closely and without panic. The truth being that, yes, he did need it more whatever he took than anyone else needed, although that didn't bother him much here mathematically, as there were other ways this could go badly. Picking a leading example at random. Done, Vicky declared stiffly. Scales. Now his left hand was free, and enough light leaked through from upper left/right areas of the ceiling where they had half customarily used soft Havaianas like bats as useful apps thanks to rebalancing HBO schedules for things like green. I hope for these days. To see Rick LaPree staring with obvious, unconcerned bafflement at his biocybernetic left arm. There were 2/5 centimeter defacements visibly defined on the delicate scale-covered outer surface looming out of the upper left corner where it scraped up against muscular systems practiced Roman 3 but which should appear only on the insides where muscle memory for contorted gestures had been newly recorded in an otherwise outside-in skin. Nothing wrong besides that his nerve net was getting jumpy again, and an apparent confirmation of the idea that structure and function really are both types of thinking. Some research has shown that skeleton's part is mostly SVDP-assisted neural wiring work which affects your mind directly in every way. But the scaled robot got quieted no matter. Flipping, it slips into an inscrutable yet enthusiastic pose in midair, saying nothing at all programmatically except, "Good boy," just like last time. The man with whom they once stared down for an hour as ran dogs across Peru made it a point. It's also true that Vicky, leaning across from behind from her own seat, made farting noises, kind of high-pitched and went whistling, the wind frantically, before starting to flick her wrist suggestively, which shows how insane this woman was already towards the end as she thought to spend any amount of time she could legally intercept with the nation's most secret organization. She reported, "Absolutely perfect. Now switch off practice mode." It would only take an extra second or two and a lot of slightly fuzzy surgery between nervous cells to completely erase those limb divisions. Part of Weimer had to review their recent memory banks first, which pointed out that some organ had begun seeing/thinking in terms/levels, which made more sense when looked at backwards in time from a clock. Odd enough to designate exactly when quantum superpositions became carousel spins visa. And then there was always the extreme case of the very Paternarian sort of engineer Gretchen Hildenbrand, whose overriding concern seeks to produce an individual with no subjectivity motivated by love or fear, who has absolute control over space/time and is driven to organize everything in it into irrevocable paths eternally oscillating between regularities and irregularities until pattern becomes pointless except locked in the unconscious. This sounds radical enough until you realize that evolution once in a while slips actual hierarchies of bossing onto most species. Such that most are genetically complex enough to comprehend their own breeding habits, but not complicated enough to seek any ultimate goal beyond not having themselves raped, fed, or allowed to breed, while evil freaks who raise hell in every direction are maybe kept at bay in the comfort zone since birth, somewhat aware they're self-loathing maniacs destined for a worse fate, but perhaps too complacent to really make much effort toward overthrowing natural selection. Sadistic street, the world is full of people who learn this when they're insane. Others just decide it doesn't matter after all. Many fall apart entirely and they're endless confines, obeying the rules even if they don't know them, except hallucinating escape routes lasting a total span of seconds where anything beautiful finally gets born but almost never present within the framework long enough to be told about it, and a few retard geniuses go speeding off into quantum hell, gaping mouth wide open anyway, sensing something purity that should have been with them always since birth and can't yet describe correctly. The near future will be quite something when you begin to view people like Dr. Lopushinsky from a new angle, as vantages around a central nucleus with only somewhat different vestigial trajectory, or a circumscribing perfect clockwork corridors whose rules consist entirely of different points gravitating mysteriously, though who knows for sure why, but these are nevertheless connecting dots toward an infinite series of mirrors. The irony being that altogether scientists may have only just now started looking up into the sky enough to see what spit is flying up to meet them with surprising speed. All at once it has started raining strange mirror spatter, which continues, going undetected until an embarrassing miss at most, until it sure isn't funny anymore.